15 million Americans are out of work.
Employers cut 125,000 jobs in June.
The most layoffs since March 2010.
Look at the flat line. It just stubbornly has refused to go down, 9.8%.
9.2%.
9.7%.
There are now more long-term unemployed Americans than at any time since the Great Depression.
If you want to see how the free market really works, this is the place to come.
There's nothing more inefficient than an economy in which people who want to work don't have the opportunity to do it.
The unemployment rate dropped to 8.1%, but only because so many discouraged job seekers gave up looking.
Most of these people want to work. That's been studied again and again. But the job situation doesn't allow it. There aren't jobs.
Never in the last 60 years has the length of joblessness been this long.
It means their energy is wasted, their training is wasted, their skills depreciate. It's just a tremendous waste of human resources.
So the question has to be sharpened. If the economy that we collectively manage, our economy, does not offer them any work, and that's the situation now for 26 million people, and their kids are hungry, who's going to help? Are we going to help or not?
At a time when millions of our countrymen remain unemployed, the president again proposes tax increases on job creators.
Uncertainty, burdensome regulations, and the fear of higher taxes are making it harder to create jobs and stay afloat.
That, to me, is the biggest red herring that's coming out in campaigning these days. It's just not right that we can expect a lot of gains from cutting taxes to better off groups.
Higher taxes kill jobs, lower taxes create jobs and prosperity.
The greatest economic boom in American history took place with tax rates at the 90 to 70% range in the post-war boom. So the evidence is that you can do this and manage an economy better than we've done.
The total level of taxes that are collected by the federal, state, and local governments in the United States, about 30% of national income, is one of the lowest levels of any high-income country.
The last thing you want to do if you want the economy growing is to increase taxes on the job creators. And so what we're trying to help.
At the rates of taxes that we have today, there's no evidence whatsoever that lightening up those tax rates is going to spur economic growth. On the contrary, it's just going to spur higher after-tax incomes for the wealthy.
Of course, by their very nature, taxes reduce our freedom.
Look, we've had 30 years of increasing inequality, 30 years of rising incomes at the top, 30 years of tax cuts for the richest Americans, right? We've run the experiment and the results are in. We have the highest unemployment we've had since the Depression. So the idea that by shoveling yet more and more and more of the economic pie into these already well-fed bellies.
The corporate tax rate is too high. I want to lower it.
In the hope that somehow they will then decide to invest it in ways that create jobs in our country, as opposed, for example, to shipping it off into secret bank accounts in the Cayman Islands.
Which apparently was done by the blind trustee. I mean, I had no involvement in this.
It's not only lousy economics, it doesn't even make sense when you look at the facts.
But even after the banks have been given more than $500 billion in bailout funds, the Fed said today credit conditions remain extremely tight.
Small businesses are getting turned down at very high rates for their loan applications. Meanwhile, the commercial banks in the U.S. are hoarding $1.6 trillion in cash, about 10% of GDP, money that they get for free from the Federal Reserve because the Federal Reserve's interest rate for banks is 0. Meanwhile, the stock market is at its highest point in 4 years.
There is no shortage of capital facing any of the corporations, the big ones. They're sitting on it. Why they're not spending is because the demand isn't there.
Poor and average people pretty much spend what they've got about as quickly as they get it, whereas wealthy people don't.
High concentrations of income and wealth end up reducing economic demand, end up undermining the whole economy and the job structure.
We've had the most dramatic increase in income inequality in sort of modern history in the past 30 years.
The top 1% has more investment capital than the bottom 50%. 1% has half of American capitalism. The top 400 people, 400 individuals, have more wealth than the bottom 180 million taken together.
We haven't had income concentration like this since when? Since the 1920s. And you know what happened after that? They had the Depression then. There's a link between that concentration of income at the top, concentration of wealth at the top, and the economic crisis we face.
People at the top cannot spend that much money. They buy all the houses, the yachts, the cars, the car elevators, whatever you want, and that it's a fraction of multi-million-dollar incomes, which means they save the rest and it's not spent. And which means that the demand level of the overall economy for other things goes down.
A dollar is not a dollar regardless of to whom it goes. Dollars are worth a lot more to people who have few dollars than they're worth to people who have lots of dollars.
If you give a tax cut to wealthy people, it will mostly be saved rather than spent on more consumption. If you give a tax cut to low-income people, it will almost entirely be spent on goods and services that then a business will hire a person to go ahead and produce.
We need policies where the government steps in to reflate demand. It's a basic insight of economics. Economists have understood this for a long time.
Job creation is very straightforward. We know how to create jobs, and we have actually the tools that we need to create jobs. They're in place. It's called the public sector, and increasing state and local employment can have a big impact. It's budget cutbacks over the past 3 years that have basically prevented the economy from moving towards a lower unemployment rate.
Jobs are created through many sectors and through many levels in our economy. Many jobs are created by the government.
Government does not create jobs, ever.
And Mitt Romney and the Republicans acknowledge that when they say, well, if you cut military spending, you're going to cut jobs.
It's 11,000 jobs lost in my state of Mississippi. We build a lot of ships, we build a lot of aircraft in Mississippi. It's 1 million jobs nationwide.
But many jobs are created by the government indirectly through their support of research and development.
To say that Steve Jobs didn't build Apple, that Bill Gates didn't build Microsoft, to say something like that is not just foolishness, it's insulting to every entrepreneur, every innovator in America, and it's wrong.
I say to Romney, if you want to see corporations do a lot and make a lot of money, go out on a desert island and set up your corporation. You'll make no money at all. What you need is a society like our own to make your money. Society, over the last 200 years, has created the mathematics, the chemistry, the physics, the whole infrastructure of ideas and teaching and training that gets you to the point where a Bill Gates can put the last pebble in and come out and make millions and millions of dollars.
The internet was nurtured for 40 years within the Pentagon and then handed over to private enterprise. So it's really the intersection between private enterprise and government. That's what really was the engine of progress in this country. It always has been.
So it's not a business will save us thing. It's a business will save us if there's smart government policy supporting these entrepreneurs who have these creative ideas.
This theory of flushing out dollars from Washington to grow the economy has failed. We've been there, done that, so let's try and address the problem here. The problem is spending.
Government has to start living within its means, just like families do.
The amount of debt we're adding is simply not moral.
If we stay on the current path, we are heading toward a debt-fueled economic crisis.
The big talk now is that the government needs to spend less and needs to find ways to cut its spending, become leaner and more efficient. But we know that that was not the reason we had the devastating crisis, and we know that that's not the way to get out of the crisis.
To support job creation in America, we need to keep the cuts coming. Some of the cuts we agreed to will be painful. Programs people rely on will be cut back. Needed infrastructure projects will be delayed.
Austerity during times of recession is just a recipe for further recession. There's no question about that. We can look at Europe to see what's going on there. If you start to cut government spending when the economy is weak, you're going to lay off more people, and that's going to lead to further depression of the economy.
We also want to draw your attention
to the unprecedented fiscal recklessness of the Obama administration.
Many Democrats as well as Republicans say, the problem is our deficits. The problem. The deficits aren't seen as part of the solution, they're seen as the problem.
The deficit is the symptom. It is spending that is the disease.
The best time to have deficit spending is when you've got big unemployment and low interest rates. And that's exactly what we've got now. We've got unprecedented high rates of unemployment, unprecedented since the Great Depression of the 30s, and we've got interest rates that are approximately zero.
What we ought to be doing is financing direct public expenditures for infrastructure, roads, highways, bridges, rails, mass transit.
Really, we've got to link the question of jobs to the question of needs. So what is it that the country needs? Where should the jobs be created? What kinds of things? We need a clean energy system.
One of the factors that's really going to be driving job growth over the next couple of years, and certainly in the medium term, is a global effort to rewire the world with clean energy.
That's 3 decades worth of full employment.
We see the Chinese moving rapidly in this area. The Germans have taken over leadership from us. So we need to stay in that game and actually get ahead of that game if we can.
Here we are with the possibilities of making great breakthroughs in technology using smart infrastructure, smart grids, smart transport, smarter energy, higher energy efficiency, lower carbon. But we're not doing this. This is America, but we're not even talking in these terms.
Where are the policies? They don't have them. They don't have, the only policies they have is tax cuts.
We need different policies that will put the well-being and economic security of working families first. And if the working families of America do well, guess what? In the end, the businesses of America will do well also.